Welcome back to another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity. Today we have Peter Swimm who will be sharing his journey of breaking into cybersecurity. Peter, share a little bit of a background about your career and what got you into cyber.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Peter Swimm. I have a consultancy called Toilville. And what we do is help a lot of small businesses build workplace automation, especially using AI products. Like a lot of people in tech, I didn't start out thinking about cybersecurity, but I quickly found out about it because if you ship anything that involves people, you quickly kind of run into problems and best practices and things of that nature, especially now that we're in this AI future. What you don't know can and will hurt you.
So, from your early career, what drew you to technology or what
Sure.
first got you attracted to it?
I've always been in the tech sector. My first job in high school was working for the library, and the city bought a bunch of computers for the internet, and they hired a bunch of teens to teach people how to use computers. It quickly became apparent to me that the internet was kind of like a library, but also it was like being on the street, right? You are getting information, you're going up to people, you're telling them stuff, and it's very easy to find like a wallet inspector or some kind of scammer and stuff like that. So it quickly became apparent to me, especially dealing with my loved ones, my seniors, my nieces and nephews of like security is super important on the internet because information wants to be free, but also like there's some information you don't want to be free. And there's things you can do to prevent that. This kind of foundation came handy for me when I started getting in as being a product owner at companies like Microsoft, where it takes 6 months to ship product because 3 months of that is going through security reviews and audits and the dimensions of what is the law in the area that you're talking to, what is the law in the global company, and what is the things that people want to do, what is the social contract between your users and you, and how do you get the data you need? And there's so many dimensions of who has the right to know, what you need to know, and the conflicts therein that I find really fascinating.
So, let's kind of dig in there. As you evolved your career from the library, what were some of the initial budding stages of how you grew into where you
Yeah.
grew? What did it take for you to go from working at the library to becoming a product owner at Microsoft?
Yeah. I think like the big point is one, you need to work at places that let you try stuff outside of your lane. The startup world was very helpful for me because I would come into a company as not a product owner, but in another area of the company. And because my desk is next to the CFO's desk and the CTO's desk and the CEO's desk, I pick up a lot of stuff ambiently and I see what I'm interested in, and I'm encouraged to take the load off them and do that. A lot of juniors can find themselves in an atmosphere where they're not siloed from the entire process. That is what really worked for me, where it's like, oh yeah, he's having a very detailed conversation about enterprise trust. I'm going to take my headphones off and listen to it while I do my work and just absorb stuff because I may need this information someday. I think a lot of like opportunities in tech are like that, where like, especially, people jump ship and revolving chairs and like, hey, I could help write this document, like I have the context. That is super helpful. The other thing is like talking a lot to customers because everyone's different requirements, but once you talk to enough of them, you start seeing patterns, and these are what we call industry standards, right? And, talking to people in heavily regulated industries like banking and finance and healthcare, you learn a lot about the commonalities of trust, which is basically always say no, right? Like zero trust is really easy in design. That you could do a lot of companies say we're a zero trust company, and then you see a lot of 5% trust scattered throughout the company, unevenly distributed. A lot of it is you have to kind of be like the bad cop in situations where you come in and you say, okay, here's what the laws are in the state of Washington and the United States of America and in any UN countries and whatever. And then you're like, okay, here's what the company's rules are, right? And then here's what's right by our users. Like, here's like the social contract of like, this is why people use Twitter and this is why people use GitHub. And that is the matrix that you're operating in. So how do you make it where there's a lot of pressure as a product owner to make an experience delight, 5 seconds to wow, right? And, like, if you ever bought a car or bought a house, there's processes to get approval and verification and saying who you are that are antithetical to making a slick web app. And the pressure as a product owner is how do you balance the 2? And kind of like knowing how to weather those pressures while still doing the right things in security makes you a very popular person among your engineers and your product people, your senior leadership. Because if you can ship stuff on time that does what it does, but also we're not making the engineers like look the other way against best practice and, make bad anti-patterns and stuff, that's where you kinda wanna be at, in this product. And if your organization doesn't allow you to do that, then you need to find another organization that supports that kind of mindset because otherwise it's just really hard, I think, to stay focused and ship things on time and have a quality problems.
So, how did you or how do you think about that balance? And is it really just about kind of getting those cycles in and that experience in of balancing that, hey,
Yeah.
this is what gets a good user experience, but this is also what meets safe and secure practices?
Yeah. Well, I think, like, one, you have to, like when you have to be an organization that empowers people to do the work, right? Like, I've been in big organizations where we had legal departments and we had organizations that didn't, right? And the difference is legal departments kind of gives you the template for what you want to do, but also you need to like read between the lines and figure out what that actually means for your project. A lot of people treat these as like milestones to check off in the project, but really they're things that you should think about in day one of the architecture design, right? Like, I'm going to be sitting across the table from CSO in 3 months, and I'm gonna have to explain to him this architecture diagram that makes no sense because security makes me do things in a way that goes in around the box. And is there anything I can do today to prevent that messy outcome in 3 months, right? And so I guess that only really comes with experience and having senior people you can trust to bounce ideas off of and having a process to do that because there's a lot of conventional wisdom that doesn't hold up under security practices. I think especially when we're talking about like that delight, user experience stuff. Like if you look at security grade applications, they have the most awful user experience, right? Because they're completely empowered to make the most secure path, right? Like if you look at lockbox type stuff and all that, and then you compare it to like how easy to set up Pinterest, which is like designed to be leaky and share information, it's a whole different game. But then if you dig underneath the surface of Pinterest, there's all that security stuff down there too, right? So someone had to pull their hair out to reconcile those two conflicting objectives. Like, okay, we want to make it easy for grandmas to upload stuff, but we want to make it hard for Estonian hackers to steal grandma's personal information. And how do we balance those two worlds and keep things separate? Is like some companies are really good at it, some companies are slapdash at it. But it also, you have to do a lot of homework and you have to outthink yourself. You have to put boundaries and you have to have hills to die on with people in your company and say, no, this idea is materially dumb. No matter how many monthly active users you can enable, the risks are too great. And you have to show them the numbers because you can't vibe your way through the stuff that they get to vibe their way. In security, you're basically preaching status quo, dog leg go down
Mhm.
because the safest system is one that's not used by anyone. And so there's that reality too of like, okay, we need to have popularity. We need to like earn our keep and make our investors happy too. So it's going back to the start thing. That's why it's so useful to be in small companies where you can hear the business discussion. So you don't just have a list of requirements and not understand, oh, we're doing this because so and so wants to do this, but maybe there's a better way now that I have all the pieces.
And kind of as you grew and evolved your career, how did you decide what you wanted to do for you? Because I
Mm,
think oftentimes a lot of junior candidates say, "Oh, I want to do this," not knowing the path, but not knowing what's right for them.
yeah. I encourage juniors to be very promiscuous, right? And I think a lot of people say, "I'll stick with a company and all that." But I think the grass is always greener on the other side because you can reframe what you learn in another thing. And eventually things that don't apply universally fall away and things that do. And as you do this, you get more confident in sticking up for what you intuitively think is right versus what you suspect is right. And you can cite evidence. And I think a lot of times organizations, to succeed in organization, you have to model the behavior of the organization exactly. If that's hard for you to like fake it or to like, accept the conditions they do, you owe it to yourself to go somewhere else because I think that is your job as a career person is to like, okay, I need to find the things I like to do that minimizes the things I don't like to do for people who respect and accept the things that I say as well backed with thought and intention. And so I did a lot of skipping around, like, and it's not through all my choice. I've been acquired 3 times, I've had companies shut down 3 or 4 times. And it's all kind of the same. It's like it's easy to come up with ideas and it's easy to start over, and you shouldn't be afraid of that. But also, like every time you go somewhere, you pick up something that makes 3 months go away in the new job, right? And you could just take that, and when you start a new job, the onboarding can take a week because you already know how you did it for other jobs, and everyone's super impressed with the hire that they made, and you can build the system the way you like it now because you're not blocked by the people you were blocked in the old company.
As you think about your career journey in those acquisitions or those divestitures, how do you have a career strategy? Do you reassess every time, or you kind of wing it and uh,
Yeah.
evolving technology trends?
I try to stay relevant. I work in conversational AI, and I think that is a very safe field because every time AI dies, it comes away back 2 years later as another kind of AI. And because the thing that's on the present is people talking to computers. Like people are still every day people are talking to computers. So it's easy for me to reframe experience from 2010 to 2015 into 2026, right? And being able to understand like, oh, socially, like here's how I fit in society. And it doesn't matter that I worked for enterprise security software and now I'm working for a gaming security software, or a different market because the job still remains the same, right? It's, maintaining trust and steering projects and all that. And once you can find that kind of cheat code where, okay, now I can apply for any job that is, it doesn't matter that I've worked in for 15 years. I'm going to go work for Hasbro making Dungeons and Dragons because they don't get candidates that have financial services acumen, security, and I'm just going to slam dunk it and have a job that maybe pays less, but I have more fun and autonomy to do stuff. So you start seeing wins like that where it's just like, okay, I'm going to have less of a good stock options, but also I won't have a reorg every 12 months into a completely different product that I didn't pick when I was hired, So I think there's a lot of that too. And, being able to like, what is me as a product and like, what do I want to represent to a company? And if that company is kind of doing it for me, then cool, I'm happy. I don't think I've ever been at a company for more than 5 years in my adult life, but they got bought. Hooray. I got some money, but I got to look for a job. Or, oh no, we ran out of money. I got to get a job. And I think like thinking to myself as the company and the product, then I know how to like stay around companies and not stay on companies that are like circling the drain and all that. So I think there's a
You
little bit of
you
that too.
you mentioned me as a company, and I think I've talked about this in many different ways. One, to get yourself a board of directors to help guide you, a board of mentors. But then recently, I've come across a different way to frame it. And the book is called Never Search Alone. He comes from a product background like yourself, and he encourages individual to create a candidate market fit of themselves
Mm,
and to work with their peers to develop and harden their candidate market fit with those from within their circle and outside their circle to really refine what you're looking for, their do's, their don'ts, their wants, their don't wants, so that
mm,
they can kind of hone in their ideal job, like you mentioned. Maybe you don't get the stock options, but you get that Friday off or that less pressure so that you can do that extra project research work on the side kind of
mhm.
option. So really kind of hones in yourself as a product. I mean, so it was quite interesting that you brought that up. Go
And
ahead.
I just want to say it. And that is kind of like what led me to start my consultancy, right? Because I would talk to so many people and I'm like, wow, I wish I could talk to someone like you. Because I would talk to customers to solve hot tech problems, be the voice of the product for people. And I think once in tech you feel that, you realize you're a person like you, then you kind of are free from imposter syndrome and all the other things that plague you as a junior. Where it's like, yeah, I'm a big deal. or I know something that they don't know, and here's how I can articulate it. So I think those are like super important things to learn as you kind of get in your 20s and 30s.
No, absolutely. And I think there's definitely some considerations when going out alone and doing it. There's a whole business construct of the taxes and the bills and the accounts receivable and the marketing and if you hire people or not, that comes along with creating your own consultancy. So congrats that you went out and you did it. I wanted to touch back on your lineage of talking to computers and how it's evolved and how it's still relevant, like going back through like 2010, 2007, and today, like we wanted to talk to a back then, but it was really the user interface was clunky. It
Mhm.
wasn't very responsive to our commands. Now they're really good at neural lingual processing and listening to our commands. And now you have molten bots that can go out and, and do
Yeah.
their own thing and have their own social networks. What's your perspective on how things have evolved?
Yeah. Well, I think this is something that's been happening since the invention of POSIX, Unix terminal lines, right? Because when you talk to a computer, you're talking to in code, and code compiles it into ones and zeros and does stuff. And so that became not enough. So we made terminals. And so the terminals bundle together constructs where you can say grep file, blah. And then the question is, how do we turn this into natural language? And so that's where kind of like my industry started starting. And so, the first 2007, it was like you could press one on the phone or you can say one. And I guess that's better. That's cool. It's accessibility triumph. But like, I think there's been a lot of like the the end goal is for it to be a conversation like I'm talking to you right now with a machine, and for it to like understand everything I'm saying and why I'm saying it and respond with the most appropriate response. So when you look at like, Reddit's full of AIs talking to each other, all they're doing is modeling Reddit. Right? They're modeling me because I don't post a lot to Reddit, and so, like, if I had a conversation with it, I bet I would run into seams pretty quickly, and I think that is kind of the thing that has kinda, like, held back AI is like, okay, I can make an AI replicate an ATM machine. We're talking to a teller where it's like, "Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?" Like, I order. They say the price. I pay the money. I take the food, right? And so these are, like, the common chatbot scenarios for a lot of time where it's like, okay, we're gonna make a pizza bot, and it's gonna live in the website where you can more easily click to add a pizza to the cart, but you're gonna type it into a chat for some reason. Where those things failed is like I did a pizza launching project. It was like actually for a national taco brand, and the national taco brand gave you the ability to order in chat. And so you can order like text to speech, and it launched and it had horrible user satisfaction. And they're like, "Why does everyone hate our chatbot so much?" I looked at the numbers and they let you order the bot, but they didn't let you complain about the food that came. So, like, people would order the pizza and it would come cold. And they're like, "This pizza's cold." And it's like, "I'm sorry, I can't help you. How was this experience?" Thumbs down, right? And so a lot of that kind of like, oh, we thought we were making a pizza ordering bot, but in reality, we need to make a bot that's a one-to-one mapping of every single person that works in a pizza store or picks up the phone. And that becomes a deeper project than people think about. And I think security is the same way too, where it's like, man, I just want to make it easier for people to order pizza. Okay, well, you're taking credit card info, you know? So now you're entered a whole world of, SSL and security and banking regulations. Is the money coming from overseas or not? And so all these things kind of come together and you find out real quick, like, oh, your cool idea for a startup is actually like 6 months of compliance research. And
Yeah, I think I
yeah.
heard of a similar situation where an order bot didn't respond so well to drunken orders in the drive-through window or requests for odd amounts of water, and it would like crash the store.
Yeah, and it's just like so yeah, that's the other thing, like, I worked with I've worked with the people who worked on things like Microsoft Tay, and I don't know if you remember that, it's just like and they're so proud of Tay. They have no regrets or, like, things I could have done different about Tay, and they thought it was just bad actors, right? But, I think making an application that goes in the wild is like raising a child, and you're responsible for the way it responds to the world one way or the other if you didn't properly prepare it for the worst people in society to use it, right? Because, and I think that's what security really is like. One, we need to make a safe space for the people who use our product and platform. And two, we have to make a completely uninteresting experience for the worst people in the world who want to exploit our product for either profit or giggles, right? And that's kind of like, you have to kind of be in the mindset of like, what are creeps like, or what is organized crime like, and all that stuff too. So having that kind of like worldview. My grandma always said the only way to be street smart is say no, which cool. You just say no all the time, and you don't have a business and you didn't start a company, but you have to figure out like what are ways to say yes that don't compromise the vision of what I'm trying to do.
So for the next generation that's looking to get into either AI automation or cybersecurity, what tips and tricks do you have for them?
Man, I would say learn how to audit all the security holes that vibe coding makes would probably be a good start. Like I've seen all the time. Like I'll watch a vibe coding tool and it's just like right now, I'm working for a client where I'm making a server runtime that's supposed to only talk over TCP/IP insecure things, and my dev environment is hooked up to a Postgre database, and it's not supposed to talk to Postgre database, and it's isolated from Postgre database, and Claude Code still tries to like, oh, I'm just going to go. Oh, here's the database. I'm just going to read directly from the database using the root keys that I found in the keychain. It's just like these systems are just so optimized for results that they are like the most sloppy, security devs you've ever hired. And I think being able to like reconcile the needs of security also with the attractiveness of vibe coding where you can describe it, I think is gonna be a very furtive space because you're gonna have like the CEO who tells you to do dumb things that's moderated by the product manager is going to be shortened. And you're just going to get a command from the CEO that is like a spec. And you're going to have to read it and see, like, oh, here's all the things that the vibe code skipped. So it make working code for the demo that I have to build. Right. And you can vibe it, but you just have to understand, like, this is like the requirements for the thing. And you still have to understand how to build the thing.
So essentially, the CEO or the sales team created the POC, but now you
Ju-
have to create the thing and create
Yeah.
the thing securely.
Yeah, and not only did they create the thing, they sold it. So we have a
Yes.
contractual obligation to deliver it. And so, you know, that's the worst part, right? Because it looked so good in the demo that, and I guess they didn't have a CSO on the other side to review anything, and they signed the contract. I had, I owned the product when I was at Microsoft that was the subject of a DEF CON talk, an exploit in my product I identified 14 months prior that I had a spec completely written to fix, but it was unfinanced because the AI explosion was making other things more worthwhile to invest in, and we had to ship demos. And so, like, I had 15 people come up to me the day after DEF CON. It's like, what are we gonna do? What do we do? It's like, well, here's the spec I shared with you 6 times before, and we can ship it in a month. Let's ship it and fix it, and it's just like, I think a lot of time people and companies, especially like ones that are like trying to get things out the door, treat security as a gate versus like a thing you do from day one. So if you can be an organization where one, you're there with product on day one, making sure that even the demo has good secure practices, or at least the foundations for building them. So you're not trying to fix some vibe monstrosity. You're in a better place to work than most people right now.
That's such an important thing, like culture and having that risk-oriented culture as being part of it, because I think slapping security on at the end of the SDLC process is like trying to put a padlock on a vault that wasn't designed to really withstand anything attacking it, and you have a tiny little padlock securing a huge vault, and yeah, someone's gonna attack it and someone's gonna get in.
Yeah. I mean, and you can have the biggest padlock in the world. And if the God password is password two,
Yes.
and then the CEO drunkenly types it into a Telegram chat, you're owned, right? Like, so, there's all kinds of like layers, and there's so many ways to get undone in a company. Like, I was at Microsoft when they started their zero trust,
Hmm.
and the zero trusting happened because high level leadership somehow leaked the rootkit password to Azure.
Mm.
And so like it didn't leak anyone's password, but the most important one that unlocked the other passwords. And like, it makes you question, like, okay, what am I doing in an organization on a platform that allows a single actor to unlock the entire infrastructure? You
Hmm.
know, like
Yep.
you have to like interrogate like how your company works. So if you're like extreme junior, like, I think even extreme juniors have the wherewithal to see stuff that doesn't make sense, right? Like, and if it doesn't make sense to you in the description and in, the reviews and seeing the product
Ask
go out in
why.
the market, ask why.
Yeah. Threat
And
model
if
it and
there,
go, this doesn't make
and
sense. Why?
maybe you'll learn why it makes sense. And if it makes sense, you learn something. And if it doesn't make sense, you might work for fools. You might work for like people who are trying to ship something in 18 months because they're going to be at a different company in 24 months. You know,
That's true.
so
That's true. Well, Peter, thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your journey. Really appreciate it. We'll share the links for your organization and any other resources that you want to share when we share this podcast, and really appreciate your time.
great. Thanks for having me.